Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Awesome. I'm gonna change my video real quick.
yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah, I have made you a co-host as well, so you have few permissions also.
Amazing.
Yeah,
How you doing today?
yeah, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
You just exceeded 5,000 followers, right? Yeah, on LinkedIn.
Yeah, a couple
That's
days ago, which is wild to me. I never thought I'd be this type of person to have followers and whatnot. It's so strange to me.
yeah, actually you regularly post, so that makes a difference, I feel, because I have been doing the same lately from past few months, and that connects people. They if the interest matches, then that's what they do. They follow, they comment, and even one
Mhm.
follower is amazing. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. You know what I noticed too is like when I comment on other people's posts, that's when I get more followers actually. Um,
Exactly. I've seen your comments. Mostly it's not like that. Hey, I agree, or it's some information you are providing, and that generates value. People see that and they think that this guy must be knowledgeable, or he must be having some kind of information. So that's why I also did do the same thing. Like
yeah.
following you, and you must have seen even on your post I do some kind of comment. At least I try to. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love your comments and everything. So I need to tag me if you make some more posts, tag me so I see them more because I will love to
Yeah.
comment on your posts.
Yeah, definitely. I did. I think on Deliana's latest post, I did that, and you have seen that. Like, yeah, you have liked it as well. Yeah, regarding
Okay, cool.
yeah, I forgot, but yeah. Just check. Whether you are able to share your screen or not. Or okay, I think I have to give you. I think you have the permission, right? Just check.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Do you think it'll be worthwhile for me to share my screen? I don't know.
Uh, what do you mean?
Is there anything you think will be worthwhile for me to share my screen? I don't think so.
Okay, you just want to go away like that. I mean, nothing to share. You can do that as well. It's fine.
Okay. Here I can actually. Now that I think about it, let's see. Let me
Yeah,
go
it's
open up.
yeah, it's completely your choice. I just thought you might be
Yeah,
sharing something. That's why. Yeah,
I can totally share my screen because I
yeah.
have actually um the project we're going to talk about. It's the blog, and I can show exactly what it looks like.
All right.
So let me go pull it up. So we have that, and then also have a couple posts on how to send emails as well. Perfect. So I had a couple things to share for my screen.
Yeah, sure.
I will have here. Let me go practice that right now, real quick. Where is? Oh, am I sharing my screen right now? No, I'm not.
Not
Uh,
yet. Uh,
Perfect.
yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, this is the projects that I worked on, and then here's like a template for an InMail for job searching.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Cool. Let me go. Where is Zoom? Oh, stop share. Perfect.
Yeah, I think we just have a couple of minutes, and then we can start. I think within 7 or 8 minutes.
Sounds great.
So it's morning right now. That yeah, it's morning,
Yeah,
right?
it's 9 a.m. for me right now.
Yeah, it's around 9:20 p.m. for us, so quite a difference. But yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Technology's allowed us to connect all over the world over like our passions for data. So it's the coolest thing ever to me.
yeah, and I've seen that you are leveraging that knowledge in healthcare as well, because I've seen your past experiences that is more regarding healthcare, and your degree is as well with Stanford University of Medicine. Yeah, so
Yeah. So
yeah,
I did my master's there, and I really thought it was gonna be only healthcare focused. And with this
yeah,
recent job, it's really opened my eyes. I'm like, oh, actually, I'm really more passionate about data than healthcare, and
yeah.
healthcare is
So,
just a problem to help solve.
correct, exactly. So you already have a domain, in which you can leverage your data science knowledge, and you have healthcare knowledge as well. So most people, they do masters in data science, computer science, and they don't have a particular domain knowledge, let's say banking, finance, but you
Mhm.
have both the things, So
Yeah.
that
Well,
kind
I did
of,
the opposite. I had domain knowledge first, and then I picked up the data science skills.
yeah, that's what. And you have BA in sociology as well, so that might be helpful as well too. Might be, let's say, communication or presentation skills, that might be helpful as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
So that is great. I mean, usually I have computer science degree. I'm again going for a master's in computer science, so it's uh, relatively same. Might be I might have a different minor, but it's probably the same thing.
Yeah,
Domain knowledge is required, but yeah.
for
Uh,
sure.
I think more people join. Yeah, 5 more minutes and recording link being shared later. I'm not building. Yeah, Sri Krishna. Yeah, it will be shared probably. It will be shared. Yeah, recording is already being implemented. So yeah, I think let me change the messages as well. Everyone publicly. Yeah, yeah. Mark, I think you can see the messages as well from various students.
I can't see people's messages
Yeah.
currently right now.
You will be seeing it from now. I have changed the permission, so
Oh,
most
okay.
probably, yeah.
Perfect. I do have the chat open as well on the side.
Yeah. Uh, so
When
Suhas is
I share
asking
my
that.
screen, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Is Suhas is asking that is work experience required in order to become a data scientist? So, what do you have to say on that?
Yeah. Right now, or I can
Uh,
totally go into
uh,
that right now.
yeah, you can. We just had few minutes, so that's why I thought. Okay.
Yeah. No, the people are early. Get a little sneak peek. I think the requirements is that you have technical skills. So can you code? So the three main ones are Python, SQL, and R, and then statistics. So for statistics, really, what are the basics you have for that? Regression, understanding distributions, kind of a data sense around things, and then finally, business acumen. So, can you take a business problem and solve it with data, or at least provide a solution with data? So that's a very high level aspect of it. That seems like a lot, but it's totally doable in the sense that you just gotta stay consistent and learn as you go. So for me, like I failed my earlier statistics courses when I was in college. I used to not think I was able to code. The business side, I'm still growing in that aspect of it, but I just chose something and just stuck with it. And so first was statistics and this research design, experimental design. I got that down. I learned R, then I learned Python, and then I just really got better at coding and actually thinking about processes. I learned how to apply that to a business setting. And then once I was in a job, I learned SQL. And so I don't have to learn it all at once before I be a data scientist. I was like, how can I drive value today and play on my strengths and then move forward with that?
So basically, you mean to say that first we should get the domain knowledge, or let's say business acumen, and then we should start with the technical skill sets, like Python. Is that the thing you're telling?
I would say, there's no formula. I think it's a very dependent on your own context. Correct, I think if anything, play to your strength. So my strength wasn't the technical side yet.
Yeah.
Y'all are in a MS in computer science, so that may be your strength. But for me, it was like healthcare domain knowledge. So I played on that strength first to open up the door for me to go into a role where I can even expand my technical skills.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, I think just 2 minutes and then people are joining.
But I think the key thing as a data scientist, you're constantly learning. Even after I became a data scientist, every single day I'm still practicing and learning things because I just love it so much. So it's like it was a hobby for me at first. Now I turned into a career. And so I still do projects on the side for fun to learn new things or how to explain things.
Yeah, definitely. Side projects, I think you are contributing to NAS as well, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy, yeah. So actually, I am also going to contribute. Actually, we have a meeting planned next week. So I will be also, I'm not sure on which project, but he has, sent me the meeting invite link for the same as well. So let's see, what he can do.
Jeremy's the best. He's awesome to talk to, and the Nas notebooks are really fun to work with.
Yeah, yes. I have seen that, and I have seen your recording as well. I've watched it with Jeremy as well. You were having a discussion kind of thing on YouTube. You have the recording, so I watched it as well. Yeah, Mark. So which time I think we can probably start.
That sounds great. Just add something to the chat.
Yeah. So let me introduce myself and you first, and then we can carry forward. So hello guys, my name is Urvin Desai, and thank you for joining me. And I'm an incoming MSCS student at Khawari College of Computer Sciences for fall 2021. And today we have Mark Freeman with us, who currently works at Humu as a data scientist. Prior to that, he has been working as a data scientist, as data analyst at various other organizations. Plus, he has completed masters in clinical health at Stanford University. Plus, he has BS in BA in sociology as well at University of California, Davis. So he has, you can say, healthcare knowledge and data science knowledge as well. So his aim is to, if I'm not wrong, Mark, his aim is to provide, healthcare solutions to as many people as possible by leveraging the, data science. Yeah. And he has been contributing to various other platforms, open source community like NAS, which is notebook as automated service. So yeah, I mean, he is everywhere. His LinkedIn post, he is providing a lot of information to everybody. And if you're not already followed him, then I would urge everyone to please follow him. He's awesome. I have him a follower as well. So without further ado, I will ask Ma to carry on. But before that, just few guidelines I want to tell you for the session. So only use the chat option for asking questions when Mark says you so, not between the session when he's explaining any concept. So that will just, disturb Mark or other student as well. So only when he tells you to, just use the chat option and ask your questions. Plus, we will be having a Q&A session at the end. So you just have to raise your hand and I will, one by one unmute you guys and you can verbally ask those questions to Mark. Yeah, so I think that's it from my end. And Mark, you can start, your session. Yeah.
Hey everyone. So excited to chat with you all about data science. So I'm Mark Freeman. Urvin, thank you so much for inviting me and for the lovely introduction. I think one thing I also want to know is my background was healthcare, and now I'm expanding to other different areas. So I think it really highlights how your career can change over time. And so I think one thing that might be helpful for y'all to kind of hear is my background as a data scientist. How did I even get here? So my journey as a data scientist started in grad school. For me personally, I thought I was gonna be a doctor out of all things. I was pre-med for the longest, for years. Probably for 7 years, I was pre-med. And the reason why I was in my master's was to improve my competitiveness to get into grad school. So I did a master's in science and community health and prevention research from Stanford Med. That's a really long title, but essentially I got really good at thinking about public health, but also thinking about research and research design in a clinical setting. And through that program, I realized I did not like grad school at all. It wasn't for me. I know I'm talking to a whole bunch of people about to enter grad school. Grad school is awesome, don't get me wrong, but realizing that for my career path, I was like, 1 year is enough for me. 4 more years of this through medical school was not going to be the great fit for me. And I'm really happy I learned that lesson, but put me in this position of, okay, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. All my mentors are doctors. And what am I going to do with my life? And so I was at Stanford Med, really surrounded by Silicon Valley and startups. In addition, I have this sociology and social impact background. So I want to make a difference in the world. I mean, that's why I was becoming a doctor. In addition, I had this statistical skills for my master's and also research design. And the obvious choice that really came from that was data science. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a data scientist. And so from there, I took every single stats class I can get into. For my thesis, I did a whole statistical analysis to really push myself to learn R and how to do statistics. And you're thinking maybe wow, he did that and then he became a data scientist after grad school. That was not the case because I just started that interest. I didn't have the network. I didn't even know what data science does. I just knew it was a goal I wanted to reach. And from there, my first job out of my master's program was at a company called Collective Health, where it was in an operations role. So not even a technical, it was straight up operations for that. And the main reason I just want to learn more about the domain of healthcare and the data in that space. And what I did to really supplement that was I started teaching myself Python. Earlier in this, before we joined, we were talking about what are the kind of 3 main kind of technologies that we use in data science. And I would say the 3 main ones are SQL, R, and Python. And so I already knew R. I wasn't even going to touch SQL yet. But for Python, I was like, all right, Python's where it's at. So I took the train from my home all the way to San Francisco, where my job in the startup was at. 1 hour each way. I taught myself Python on the train through this website called dataquest.io. Through there, I essentially taught myself pandas and all those things and started automating all my workflows in Excel, my operations role. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. I started sharing with my colleagues. And then from there, I was like, all right, I'm enjoying this data stuff. How can I make this go even further? And so I picked up a second job part-time back at my university as a data analyst, research data analyst at the Well for Life lab, where I did a whole bunch of statistical analyses in R. And that was 2 kind of things. Is one, am I capable of being a data professional and actually get paid for and actually deliver value? And 2, do I even enjoy this? Because it was just the idea, but I had no professional experience. And within the first week, it was like a 100% yes. I was like, this is the best thing ever. I want this as my career. And I think the main thing I learned from that first role was like, wow, the importance isn't the data or the coding, it's being able to describe my analysis to non-technical people. So they hired me as a technical person and I had to describe it. So my first project, it was way too technical. I explained it to my manager and she was just like, what's happening here? And so that was a click moment. I'm like, that's why communication is so key as a data professional. So moving forward, I do that for about 6 months. And in my head, I'm like, wow, I'm doing this job. I'm loving it. Part-time by hour, I'm making twice as much as my operations role. Like, why am I still in this operations role? So I quit that job and do a data science boot camp for about a few months. And then I get my first job as a data scientist at a company called Verona Health, where I work with massive electronic health record data sets, where we had over 1 billion records using like Spark and SQL, all these different things. And so I would essentially help pharmaceutical companies, the sales team, be like, hey, we have these data assets. You're working on this new drug in the market. You know, what can our data assets answer this? And so working with big data and really understanding like the counts and the various aspects of it, of that data set to support sales and selling these large contracts. From there, I worked there for about 8 months and then pandemic happened. I imagine a lot of y'all are probably impacted by the pandemic as well, being students, and you know, it's definitely a hard time. I was laid off during that time. And surprisingly, being laid off was one of the best things that happened to me. When I was laid off, that's when I started posting on LinkedIn, because I was like, all right, I'm laid off. I'm gonna post every single day from the day I'm laid off to the day I get my next job, my process of making this happen. And that's how I was like, wow, LinkedIn's really powerful. And that's actually how I found my current job at Humu, where I essentially do 3 things as a data scientist. One of them is I build data products that actually go to end users. The next one is I do product analytics, where I actually support a VP of product or other business stakeholders saying like, hey, we have this product out. What's the usage over the past few months? Like, is there anything you should know for our next product we're building? And then finally, since we're at a startup, I do a lot of data infrastructure. So like data warehouse, data marts, ELT pipelines, things like that. And it's been one of the best jobs I've ever had. I've been having the time of my life. So that's been my journey so far, condensed in data science. So, do you have any questions regarding that? I'm happy to answer. Doesn't seem like it. Okay.
Mark,
Okay.
Suhas is asking that what are some of the roles and responsibilities of a machine learning engineer?
Yeah, so I am not a machine learning engineer. So I just want to preface that, but I have interviewed for those roles before. And I think one of the key things that, and I'm from talking to other people in the space and my mentors, I think for ML engineering, actually, let me share my screen, because this will be really useful. I think you asked a really great question of like, you know, I think another way to phrase this is like, where in the data pipeline or the data process of driving value do you want to sit at? And so let me go pull up the Microsoft data science lifecycle. And I think this really sums up, and I'll put this link in the chat so y'all have it as well. And let me share my screen real quick. All right, can you see my screen? I can't see the chat, so verbally yes or no.
Yeah, it's visible, Mark. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds great. Awesome. So this is the data science lifecycle. I reference this chart all the time. And when I was laid off that one time I was describing, I was trying to think, what does my, what type of role do I want for my data science journey? And for me, I was really interested. Is like, what does ML or just data science in general look like in production? And so for my job at Verona Health, I was really focused on the business understanding and data acquisition and understanding, right? But for a ML engineer, you're going to be really focused on the modeling and deployment aspect of data science. And so ML engineer, I think like space is so new. So thinking of titles is all strange. So they have ML ops, data engineer, ML engineer, but you're asking for ML engineer. So you're going to be essentially creating ML models and thinking strategically, like how do we put that in production and systems in a product. And so you're going to be working very closely with engineering to essentially, you have this expertise in ML and statistics and being able to code that, but working with engineering to get it into the product itself. Another key aspect of it is like, once you put a model out there, that's just the starting point. Especially with thinking about COVID, I'm assuming a lot of models changed and a lot of people are scrambling because all the assumptions change now. COVID was such a shifting event in our society worldwide that now what I'm describing here is called model drift. So when you put a model out there, you have your scores, how is the accuracy of this model, right? You want to track that over time. And so over time, they're going to drift, it's going to degrade, and you're going to have to retrain their model. And so ML engineers, beyond creating the models and working with engineering to deploy it, they also are going to be monitoring those models and making sure that they're still accurate and can still drive value for people. I'm hoping that answers your question. Let me get my screen going again. One moment, my screen's having issues. Awesome, I see your yes in the chat. I'm so happy to hear that. Any other questions? Oh, I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I think you can unmute her if she wants. Yes, Smriti.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. So I have two questions for you. One is that what are the challenges that you face in this transition? And secondly, you mentioned that you're working in the data product side, right? So does web development help you in that?
Definitely. I'm super excited. I think that's actually a great transition. So what was the first question again? Can you repeat that first question? And I can transition to the next question.
So my first question was that what challenges did you face in this transition from your medical side to the data science end?
Perfect. Yeah. So I think the hardest piece was knowing what to learn and like trying to disengage from like, do I need to learn deep learning? Do I need to learn all this calculus, right? And the reality is just pick something and just go with it. You can have analysis paralysis of like choosing the correct thing to do when in reality, just build stuff. Build a project and that will give you more information on what you enjoy and like what you want to learn more about, maybe where the gaps are at. And so I think that biggest challenge was learning how to like leverage my expertise. And my mentor really provided me two great pieces of advice. One was, Mark, being realistic, your technical skills are kind of trash right now. We have that relationship, so it was okay. I was like, yeah, no, you're totally right. I'm not there yet, right? But he said your healthcare skills are top notch. Like you understand demand healthcare, and so you need to capitalize on that. And that will open the door for you to get into a place where you can build those technical skills. So that's exactly what I did. I leaned in and like, hey, I'm still learning the Python at an excellent level. I can do statistics, but I know your data so well, more than any other person, and that can help me make better assumptions and move quicker and support the team as I build up those technical skills. The second thing for that transition was, he said, I specifically chose startups because there's a lot more flexibility to like make it to decision makers. And so learning, who I want to apply for. So he said, find 10 startups that are doing interesting stuff and just reach out directly to the decision maker. and like shoot your shot essentially of like, hey, you know, how am I going to drive value? Hire me. Right. And so the next question is like, how do I use kind of like, you know, technical skills and product development? And I think that's like a really great segue into a project I actually really want to share with you all, is an end-to-end data science project that I implemented at Humu, where I essentially developed an NLP pipeline and put it in our product. And so I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see. One moment. Share screen, desktop. Awesome. So here's my screen. And so in our product, essentially to give you background, what Humu does is that we send nudges to employees to drive behavior change. And so you may think like, why you're in healthcare, why are you in behavior change? Many times for like community health, chronic diseases require behavior change interventions. And so I went into this role because I wanted to learn, what does behavior change look like in a data product? And if you take a wider view of healthcare, you think about well-being goes beyond just like how well you eat or physical activity, but it's like your mental health, your work health, your environment. And so this is such a great segue of my healthcare experience into a new domain. And so with this, our product is essentially like we send many interventions and say like, hey, before your meeting, consider these 3 things, right? And through that, we're able to measure actually people improving in their jobs and productivity, and also just their overall happiness, which is really cool to work on a product that makes people more happy. And so every 6 months, we send out a survey to our customers where we get more information. But I work with a whole bunch of psychologists who make these amazing surveys that are kind of validated and everything. And they have a whole bunch of free text in it. One of the challenges, if you're a large customer, say like 10,000 employees, you're going to have 10,000 comments for each like survey response. And there's no way for you to understand, you know, what are the key comments that you want to learn. And so we created a product together where essentially, you know, we have these, let me go down right here. We have these key areas, say like, hey, you know, in this survey, we found that when I'm with my coworkers, I feel included as part of the team, right? And we have a Likert scale saying how much they agree to that. My job as a data scientist was to determine out of those 10,000s of comments, what 3 comments were the most important, and to surface that into that product. And so for each point, they got 3 comments that are really ideal, that captured the whole kind of aspect for that, for the kind of C-suite to understand those aspects. And so this is like one of the first projects I've done as a data scientist where I actually felt like, oh, hey, I'm actually a data science. I'm doing this ML data science thing. And surprisingly, I think the one thing I really want to note for you all, especially as you kind of like think more about this career and you're going into industry, is surprisingly, this wasn't a data science problem. That may sound counterintuitive, but it was a feature building problem. And I think with y'all having kind of the computer science background, you may be well more equipped to understand how to navigate that scenario. And so I want to quickly break down, now that you've kind of seen this product and what it looks like, I will stop sharing my screen and I want to break down what that process was like and how I use kind of my technical skills along with my data science skills to work with a team to build a product. And so kind of the first step in industry, for at least at Humu, is that we'll get our product team or product leads, we'll be talking to customers and they'll be saying, you know, hey, we really need this feature. Or one of our larger customers are like, this feature is really important to us. If you want us to stay, like, you need this feature, right? So there's different things they have to balance and according to like, what does the market want? What does our main customers want? And so one of those things was text analytics, because customers are having such a hard time understanding the surveys. So that comes to us. We create a team of like UX researchers, me as a data scientist. We have a whole bunch of engineers to build out these different products. We have a design team. All these different people, we come together and we discuss the problem. We're like, all right, here's the problem. Here's how we're going to scope it. And the key thing I want to know is, being a startup, I'm working on a V1. So this isn't gonna be the best product in the world. It's still gonna be amazing. I mean, look, I showed you the screen, it looks great, but we're gonna have to prioritize what's the most important thing to build something end to end, right? And I think that's the distinction between kind of building a feature versus a whole data science aspect of it. And so on my end, once I got the idea of what we're doing, I went back to the drawing board. And I essentially, when I do data science projects, I break it down to 5 steps. And I call it the tribe framework. So T is talk. I'm going to talk to all my stakeholders to understand what are the true needs, what am I missing, what are essentially the kind of assumptions that I need to know so I don't kind of make mistakes. The next step is the R, requirements. I'm going to map out what are my requirements for this data science project. And then the next step is iterate. I'm going to take those requirements, go back to my stakeholders, go back to the eng team and say, hey, this is what I thought about. What are your thoughts on these different aspects of approaching this problem? And I get feedback. And that's going to be a loop for a little bit until I get to a point where my requirements sound great. I can move forward with it. And then the next step is B, build. I'm going to actually build the project and try to get it going from end to end. And then finally is evangelize. I'm going to share this project throughout the company. Maybe, and you see there's a blog post so that people may share it through a blog post to kind of share like how awesome this project is and how it drives value. And so if there's anything you take away from this, and I can write this down as well and send it to Urvin so he can share with you all, is the tribe framework. If you can do that framework, you can crush any data science project. It will really set you up for success. And so one of the first things I did was like, all right, cool, this is an NLP project. And I was super lucky because my colleague, who was an engineer, who I was working with and leading the project, before led NLP research at Google. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Like, I get to learn so much from this individual. And also it's kind of scary because I'm like, all right, this is my first time implementing NLP project. And I'm going to go talk to this expert. And I think the key thing you need to know is that like when you're on the team, hopefully it's a good team with a great culture. There's no like, try to drop the imposter syndrome. We're all learning together and everyone's here to help to make this project happen. And so I created a deck where I describe kind of like where are my processes, where are my data features, what NLP model am I going to choose? Because it's a V1, I'm not going to create my own NLP model. I chose one off the shelf just to get something going. I talked to mentors saying like, hey, you've implemented an NLP project at your company. What were the key things you learned? The key thing I learned was that you need to keep it modular. So that way in the future, if we want to improve our NLP model, we just take it out and put something else in. And in addition, do I want to choose count vectorizer, TF, IDF vectorizer? If you don't know what those mean, those are just simply different ways to turn sentences into numbers, which can be read by a machine learning model. And then finally is what's the logic of going from those words and numbers to a specific thing to map onto it. So I created that deck. I presented to the team. They gave me amazing feedback. I made some wrong assumptions, which is really great to get that feedback. And then the next step was I actually built it. And this was probably the biggest learning curve for me because this is the first time I actually went through actually putting a product into production. And something I don't think they teach you in data science is that when you work with engineers, the way they think about data is completely different from data folks. In data, it's very flat. Your data, like for every row, you want unique elements for it. Because, imagine putting in a machine learning model, maybe like a JSON or something like that's not going to work for the most part. And so from there, I really had to learn how to work with their nested data. We have a NoSQL database. And so I'll have a field that has like 4 different nests in it with all this different logic. And I have to flatten it before it goes into my pipeline. The other key thing I wanted to note too is that when I'm building this, I didn't have any data available to actually test it. So like, how can you do data science without data? And the answer is like, we didn't have the customer data. So I created my own data. And this may sound funny, but we have a whole bunch of office quotes in our code base now. So I went to the office, found a whole bunch of quotes, copy and pasted it, put it into an Excel file or a CSV file and made like comment 1, comment 2, comment 3 as the unique identifier. And I basically built this NLP model off a whole bunch of office quotes. And from there, I basically started building out the pipeline with that fake data, and more importantly, building unit tests for that. And then once I got it going end to end, I basically took out the office clothes CSV, and I worked with engineering to get that data set mapped into my, or get the raw data from our product in our database to go through our pipeline and fix any things that maybe didn't work out. Then I also worked with engineering to essentially, after I got the going working end to end, making it so we work together to create a debug sheet where, based on essentially what my algorithm and pipeline kind of generated, what were the outputs, and testing what was missing, what was wrong, and fixing the logic for that. And I think the thing that really surprised me the most is, like, in the data science lifecycle, many times you're asked, like, hey, what's the accuracy of this model? How is this model doing? And the biggest thing I struggle with is that we didn't do that. And I think that's the big thing I want to highlight, the difference between a data science project versus a feature building project. As a data science, you could totally be doing both, was that the end goal wasn't to build a model. The end goal was to create a product feature that went end to end that used an off-the-shelf model. And so for a V1, we just assumed that it worked perfectly. And and there probably are things that are missing, but the main thing is that we just want to prove that this product feature could work, and that the customer could use it, and that the customer liked it. And all of our customers liked it. And so that's a key thing you want to balance in industry, is complexity versus ease of just getting something done and driving value. I could have made this more complicated. I could have made a labeled data set and check the accuracy and try to improve those things, but it wasn't worthwhile for driving value. What was more important was just having an end-to-end pipeline. But the key thing is I made it modular enough where that we can plug and play different pieces and different logic. And when we have a labeled data set in the future, once we validate that this is the main driver of our business, we now have all the tools to create a labeled data set and actually test the accuracy and improve it over time. And so that's an end-to-end data science project in industry. And I'm hoping that answered your question earlier. And I'm open to any other questions you may have as well. I'm just gonna pause for a little bit. I'm happy to answer any questions in between before I kind of go to the next topic.
Mark, one question was there by Namrut, that what are some of the examples from your experience on how data science and cybersecurity are related? So if you can answer that.
I think that's an excellent question. I unfortunately don't have an answer to that because I'm not in cybersecurity. Yeah. But so like take my advice with a grain of salt, right? So like talk to a cybersecurity expert. But as someone who works in product, I deal with logs all the time. So where's the customer clicking at? Where is the customer going in the web pages, right? For security, to my understanding, they work with logs as well. What part of the database is a user going into? Where do they go across? So I think a key thing, just thinking about my working as a product data scientist, is how can you work with logs really well? How can you understand logs? How can you understand the database and like navigate, like working with stakeholders, like, hey, where are these logs at? Where did you create it? What's your logic behind creating the logs? And so one of the biggest things I'm not necessarily fighting engineers about, but like heavily debating engineers about, I'm like, this log is really important. Please spend time to create it. Another aspect is like, all right, you created these logs. Where did you store them? Or why did you store them in 2 tables? And now I have to figure out the logic to determine which one's the correct one, right? And so either because you have an MS in computer science, as an engineer, if you want to work with data folks, be very kind to your data folks and really think critically about your logs. And as data scientists, be kind to your engineering folks because they're creating the logs and you're going to have to work with them heavily. And I think that's a key thing for cybersecurity. From my limited knowledge of cybersecurity, a key aspect where I think aligns to my data science career is like working with log data. I also see a question in the chat is like, how important is data preparation as a data scientist? Is it done by a data engineer? And so data preparation is most of my job. I think I think you hear like the phrase like 80% of data science is data cleaning. That is so true. But I want to highlight that data cleaning goes beyond just like removing null values or standardizing data and removing outliers potentially. I think the key thing that especially in industry is what's the business logic that created this data. And so you really got to think when you get the data, it's gone through so many different transformations or steps before it even reaches you. And so thinking this high level, and this is just a very broad model, it can totally be different in aspects for different companies, but the data is generated in a product. So you have those raw data, those raw logs. It happens in the database. Your database is essentially where the data is stored for transactions for your product to move really quickly. From there in your database, it goes into your data warehouse, and you either have two different formats. You have the ETL, which is you extract the data, you transform the data different business logic, and you load into the data warehouse. Or this new paradigm coming out, it's called ELT, where you extract the data from the data warehouse, you load into the data, or from the database, you load into the data warehouse, and then you do the transformations with SQL. Now you have more control over it, right? But the key thing to note is that a lot of steps happen before you reach the data. And sometimes those steps make sense. Sometimes those steps are really bad steps, or sometimes those steps made sense maybe a year ago, but the business changed. And so a lot of my time data cleaning isn't necessarily like, oh, like this value seems a little off and like, I don't know if it's real. It's more so I'm talking to the engineers, I'm talking to the business stakeholders, I'm talking to sales or customer experience because they've talked to the customers. And I'm asking them, hey, I see these counts, I see this type of data, like what's really happening? What's your logic of it, of how it got to this point? And I think that's the key aspect that really separates a okay data scientist from an excellent data scientist, is that ability to dig in, understand the data collection, because that gets you closer to the truth. And once you're closer to the truth, you can analyze it better. And so I work at a startup. We don't have any data engineers. I'm working with engineering to do data engineering. So they're working on the earlier side of the database and the ingestion, all that. I'm working in the data warehouse and creating data marts. And so I do a lot of it myself. If you're in a larger company, they most likely have data engineers. And so I think a key thing too is that a lot of companies are learning is that originally the past 10 years, they just hired a whole bunch of data scientists. Like, cool, go make some magic happen. You're really smart. You have these coding and data skills, make it happen. But they realized like nothing really went into production. They needed some more complex systems to really make things work. And so now you're seeing a lot of people hired. The hot thing now is data engineering, because they can prepare the data to actually be used within a model. And so the data engineering, like, do you need to know data engineering? I think the key thing is if you want to be a data engineer, then yes. If you're going to be a data scientist, you just need to be mindful of what's the size of the company and what's their maturity of understanding data. Because at a startup, I'm doing some data engineering, but I'm not a data engineer. At another startup or at another company that's much larger and it has more maturity, they have data engineers. And so you're going to be really mainly focusing on the data aspect of it. So I hope that answered your question. Quick question, they asked, what's the difference between a database and a data warehouse? And so still learning this myself because I had to jump into this kind of aspects. So from my knowledge today, and just I would highly encourage, there's some great books. A really great book I like from O'Reilly is How to Build Data Intensive Applications. So that's a great book to reference if you want to learn more about these kind of things. But to my understanding from what I've read so far, a database is more so like where the data is stored to be used for transactions. By a transaction, so say for instance, I'm on the Amazon website and I go click on an item that I want to purchase. And when I go to that web page, it's like instant. It's like it happens so quick, right? A database is used for that because you can do those transactional things where it can happen really quick and I can log what's happening. Everything's going really fast. For a data warehouse, that's where the data is going, where it can be analyzed for later. And so it's kind of a warehouse where I process the data to be used for insights or analytics. And now there's a whole bunch of other things like data lakes and a lake house and all these different formats that kind of go beyond the scope of this conversation, but that gives you a high level of it. And one key thing I want to note is that in the past like 3 years, the space has changed so much on like best practices. And so really learn about the cloud space and data storage. It's a really interesting thing as a data nerd myself of where things are out there. Some other questions I want to check out before I move on to the next topic. I think they really align. So the question is, I'm interested in data science application healthcare domain, but haven't worked on healthcare domain problem statements. What will be your 2 cents to get my career moving in that domain? So I think the biggest thing is there's 2 things you should be doing. Is 1, start gaining some domain knowledge by talking to people. Go on LinkedIn and just start finding doctors, nurses, pharmaceutical folks. And you notice I'm not saying data scientists at all, right? Go and talk to them, be like, hey, what's your experience in healthcare? What are the problems you face? How does data how could data help solve your problems? The key thing is that you want to learn about electronic health records and claims data. So talk to those people, right? Then talk to data scientists because they're the ones working on it. So get a good framework and knowledge of the space. Go look at blogs and articles to understand what's happening in the domain. Then talk to data scientists to learn how do they apply your data skills to solve those problems in that domain. The second thing is, I don't have domain experience in healthcare. How do I kind of get my job in there? When you're building your portfolio for jobs, if that's the avenue you want to go for achieving a job in healthcare or in data science, have all your data science projects around healthcare. And so by having, and this can apply even if you're in healthcare, outside healthcare, what's the domain you want to be in? So maybe you're in gaming or finance or wherever it may be. Have a theme in your portfolio where I'm not just a data scientist working on random projects. I'm a data scientist who's very interested in this domain, and my past 3 projects have been on different aspects of this domain. And that's gonna be way more impressive for an employer because they're like, wow, not only is this person like learning and trying to apply their data science skills, but they're also very interested in this domain as by the fact that they have all these projects in it. And a bonus thing is don't try to find some easy data set. Find the messiest data set you possibly can work with and use that data because the real world is not the Titanic data set. It's not the Iris data set. Many times if you put that in your portfolio, hiring managers like, I've seen this 20 times. This isn't interesting. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see, there's more questions in here. Let's see, action data science, chain database, industry applications, where areas like work on machine learning, natural language processing, deep learning. Really informative. Cool, awesome. So I think the next topic I really want to talk about, I think this might be the last topic before we kind of do a Q&A. We've kind of done it in between for that, but then we can open up to just having a conversation. And I think something that's probably be the most informative as you're looking for internships, as you're looking for a job, is like, how do you get a data science job? And so I've broken it down for me. So when I was laid off, I did about a year ago, I did something wild. I told my wife, I was like, look, I'm not going to apply to a single job. Instead, I'm just going to create content on LinkedIn to drive engagement so employers would come to me, right? And so I'm not telling y'all just you have to be like some LinkedIn rock star because that can be scary for some people, right? I don't even think I'm a LinkedIn rock star yet, but I wanted to get there at one point. But what I'm going to break down for you is how essentially I use what's called a sales funnel to drive my job search. And you can do it through creating content, or you can do it through direct messaging people. And so a sales funnel for a basic one, it's called the AIDA funnel. It's 4 steps. A stands for awareness. I stands for interest. D stands for decision. And then finally, the last A stands for action. And so the first step, A, awareness. So remember when I told you, my mentor told me, say, hey, find 10 companies you're really interested in. And then from there, go talk directly to the decision maker. So what I'm doing coming from a startup is like, I went on this website called crunchbase.com where they have a whole bunch of startups, right? And I find, all right, I'm looking for a startup that is about 100 people or less. And in addition, is in healthcare, right? And I find those people and I research them on LinkedIn. I'm like, all right, who's the hiring manager for this role for data science? Like, who's a data science manager? Who's a technical recruiter? Maybe it's so small, like who's the CEO? And essentially, I will create a really well-crafted, tailored message to go into their email. And so I'm actually going to share exactly a template that I use for that. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And so here's my screen. And so here is my format. And actually, I'm going to copy this real quick and I'll put this in the chat as well. All resources I'll send to Urvin. Urvin's the man. Go talk to him. He'll have all these resources for you to send out. But essentially, I first start off with like, hey, here's my name, or hello, person of interest, right? I'm reaching out due to my interest in the position within the company specifically, and then I clearly I highlight exactly what exactly is the value they need. What's their company and how does my skill set align to it, as described by your role. And specifically, I also align like I'm really passionate about this particular topic. The next step is I give a little background about myself. I say, hey, I received my education XYZ, and I focus on these key areas. And if I have some work experience, I also describe like after I worked in XYZ. And then finally, I connect those experiences to being, hey, I'll be a strong asset to your team because of these reasons. And then this is the most important part, and I think a lot of people miss this, is like many people ask like, hey, would you be open to an informational interview to learn more? Don't do that. Instead, just say, hey, let's do an interview, right? So I said, I'm excited about this opportunity and certainly it can be a valuable addition to your team. I'll be very interested in scheduling an interview at your earliest convenience to learn further about the role. And I attach my resume. So it's not a question of like, do you want to talk? It's, hey, let's talk. Let's schedule some time, right? And so that's what I use essentially now to like reach out to people for that. And I'll put this in the chat real fast so you have a link to that. And also that's my LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn as well if you're interested, if you like this content. And so essentially from there, so that's the awareness. So I'm essentially like a sales role. So I treat myself as if I'm a business of one, where I'm selling my services as a data scientist to an employer in exchange for a wage. And from there, I'm gaining interest from people. So going to the top of my funnel for awareness through those emails, through potentially content on LinkedIn. The next step is decision or interest, interest. And so I get that phone call from the recruiter. I need to describe exactly what's the value I bring at a high level and make sure it's targeted to my audience. So if it's a data science manager, they're going to understand data science topics, so I can talk about that. If it's the recruiter who doesn't know data science, right? Don't filter yourself out by talking too technical and them not understanding, right? So keep it high level and doing your research to understand what exactly is the key element that they're looking for and how your skills align with that and how you can drive value for them. So if you get past that stage, from there, you have the decision. That's the interview itself. So you're gonna have technical interviews, you're gonna have expertise interviews, all these different aspects. And so again, what's your story? Who's your audience in an interview, and how can you drive value for the company? Always bring it back to like, not just, hey, here's my skills, but more so, here's my skills, and here's why I'm the best person for the job to essentially make sure things move forward in your company. And then finally, you have the decision, and then you have action. So say they loved you, I'm sure they're all gonna love you, right? You essentially are saying, hey, you're the best person. We want to sign a contract, and that's when you negotiate the rate. And so what's my salary for this? What's the flexibility? And then once you sign an action, boom, you have a job. And the key thing of why I broke it down to a funnel is now you have levers to understand where are there leaks in the funnel. So maybe you get a lot of awareness. You're able to get a lot of emails and people respond, but you don't get past that screening interview. So now, you know, I actually don't need to work on the application process or like getting people interested in me. I need to work on my communication skills so people understand the value. So maybe you get past that. You're like bombing the interviews. I bomb interviews all the time. For me, it was live coding sessions that got me the technical skills. I'm much better at that now, but I just practiced my technical skills under pressure, right? I got past that. And then finally, the action stage, getting better in negotiation. It can be scary to ask for what you want and what you're valued. Do your research on what the market rate is for that role and work with them to expand the pie so it's fair for both ends. And so with those levers, you can understand where exactly you can focus your time, because applying for a job is a job in itself. And so how can you best focus your time? So that's my process of like trying to find data science jobs and breaking it down into like actually getting leads that lead to job offers. Awesome. And then I'm happy with the last 12 minutes. I'm happy to chat and have an open conversation with people.
Yeah, Mark, will you be open to have open to Q&A right now?
Yeah, let's totally have a Q&A right now. I'm happy to chat with people.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Karthik, yeah, you can go ahead.
Thank.
I think you're still muted.
I'm a freshly graduated. Hello.
Hi. Go ahead.
I think there is some audio issue with his mic, I guess. Yeah, I think we can take someone else if someone wants to ask any question.
Yep. Anyone else have other questions? Also, if you maybe feel uncomfortable talking directly, I'm also reading the chat. So a question I see here is, where are some areas I can work on in machine learning? Is it natural language processing, deep learning, computer vision? And so I think the main thing is like, don't focus on like what's the best. Focus on what's interesting to you and just build something. So go build a natural language processing project. Keep it simple for your first one. See if you like it. If you just didn't enjoy that process, move on to another topic such as like computer vision. Try it out. If you like it, then do another computer vision project and start building and making things more complex. And just, I think instead of focusing on what's the right thing, just completing projects and showing a progression of like completing more complex projects is way more impressive. And later on in your career, if you find out actually NLP is the hot thing, you can just repeat the process you did to learn computer vision and build out those portfolio for NLP. And so I think the key thing is don't try to focus on what's the best, just get out there and start building things. And that's where you'll learn the most. The next question is, what are the tools and technologies you're currently working on and how they make your job easy? I think the biggest tool I use right now, which is pretty funny, is SQL. I use SQL so much. It's been like my life for the past 6 months. I've been doing a lot of the data infrastructure. But the key thing is like many times, like you don't have a nice data set coming to you. You have to pull the data from the database or pull the data from the data warehouse using SQL. And so if you can get your SQL skills down, you'll be a rock star data scientist. And many times in the interview process, you'll have a SQL question. So I think if there's anything, learn SQL, because that'll just make your life so much easier. And what's funny about SQL is that the learning curve is like, for the initial aspects, it's super easy to learn. But then once you get into more complex things, it gets really hard. But like 90%, 99% of the time, you just need the easy stuff. And so just jump in, spend like a week or a few weeks just learning SQL through like HackerRank or like through a tutorial, and you'll be set. And you'll wow employers, be like, yeah, I know SQL. I can totally jump into your database and start doing data science. I see a question by Mina.
Hi, Mark. Hi, this is Meenal this side. And first of all, great session, extremely helpful. I got to know so much that I did not understand about data itself. And I think my question is, how can one sort of start thinking like a data scientist, and like how we can pick out the key points and the main parameters for that specific data set, especially when we don't have too much of knowledge in that specific domain.
Okay, perfect. That's such a great question. Like, how can I start thinking like a data scientist? I think the key thing is like start having data skepticism, if that makes sense. So it doesn't mean be pessimistic, but just be like careful about your data. And I think the key thing is that like as a data scientist, you know, you're one of the few people within the company where you can take a whole bunch of different sets of data and make decisions off of. And so when you state something's happening, there's a lot of trust that you're building, right? And so having that data skepticism and being able to communicate that is really, really important. And so to start thinking like a data scientist, one of the key things I do is like, I always break down like, what's the end goal? What's the real ask? And so when I talk about that tribe framework, I said T is talk. The reason why that's first is because I don't even start coding first. I start talking to stakeholders to really understand the problem. And the key thing you have to understand is data is really abstract. Like a table, numbers, like what does that even mean? Like how do you even make sense of like millions of rows? There's no way you can make sense of that, right? You have to use this computer to do that. And so imagine the business stakeholder who doesn't even understand data like us. How can they make the requests, right? And so many times they'll ask for ABC, but in reality, they want XYZ. And when you start working on it, you actually find out you're missing Z. So you have to do some like extra steps. And so I think if you want to start thinking like a data scientist, you have to start asking really great questions. Really ask questions that drive like what's important to them. So someone may ask you like, hey, how many customers, I'm just making something up, how many customers left our product in the past 3 months? My first question is like, awesome, like, you know, what product are you looking at? Or another question is like, hey, what's driving this question? What happened recently? And talking to those people, you'll start uncovering, you know, what are the real asks and what's the real data problem that's coming up. In addition, the next step is beyond the requirements. I think it's the iterate part. Data science is very iterative. Computer science and like software engineering is very linear. Data science is very iterative because you have to test things out and try new things out. And so being curious, and I actually, before I even code, I create fake data table shells, and I actually go into like Microsoft Word Art or Microsoft Art or Paint, wherever it is, Microsoft Paint, and I'll draw out rough sketches of the figures I want to show. And I'll go back to the business stakeholder and be like, hey, this is why I'm thinking about the end result. Does this align with your expectations? And either two things happen. They'd be like, oh, wow, that's perfect. That's exactly it, right? Or they'd be like, actually, now that I see this, I think that's the wrong data. We should actually work on this, right? And so doing all these things before even data and before coding and just being curious and interested in solving the problem and working as a team, that's what's going to help you think like a data scientist, because now you get the requirements ahead of time. So you spend all the time coding the problem, not the reverse of coding the problem and then finding out you're actually coding the wrong thing. And so I think that's the key thing. Is surprisingly, it's not the data, it's not the coding or the technology. It's asking really great questions to work with your stakeholder.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark. That really answered my question really.
Awesome, I'm really happy. Also, when I say SQL, I'm
extremely
awesome,
great advice.
so happy.
Thanks.
Perfect. I see a comment. When I say SQL, SQL. That's I don't know what's the correct way. Is it SQL, SQL? Who knows? I'm gonna call it SQL, but there's the different terminologies for that. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, this is a really great question. On ground, are almost all jobs or work related to core ML or data science? So I think the key thing is that, like, you know, if you really want to focus on ML, go for an ML engineer role, right? But you know, that's a specific type of company. And so you need to really think about what's the maturity of the company. Are they at a stage where they can actually implement ML? Excuse me, many companies are not. So what's more important is when I was talking about like that end-to-end V1 of like what's a data feature. Many times the things that are going into production are like regression or random forest, something that's really simple. The reason being is because it's easy to implement and put into production and keep in check. To actually put in those advanced like deep learning, computer vision models, the reason why Facebook and like Amazon are doing that is because they have the money and resources, infrastructure to engage in that. And so being very critical, when I showed you that diagram of the data science lifecycle, where do you want to fit and allow that to be your job search to focus on that? For me, I haven't really focused on deep learning, machine learning, because I'm more interested in startups and like how you build that infrastructure to get that going. So I know we're coming close to time. We have about 3 minutes. Urvin, do you have any closing comments or anything?
I think there is, So I think I have a question as well, if you would like to answer. So I think probably not many have asked, but what type of courses do you recommend to take in a university? Like there are so many different courses that they're providing. I understand that we can have different kind of interest, let's say CV, NLP, different kinds of things. But let's say just data science, ML. So basically, what kind of courses would you recommend for us? So we can go. Let's say we can jump to any kind of field with those type of skill sets.
I think that's a great question. I think the key thing is like, all right, you have your core curriculum your program. What's an extra class that you can fit into your program that's outside your domain? Because I think those are the key things that will help you excel. And so like, what's a business class? So like business metrics, right? Is there a class where you can learn business metrics and to talk to business stakeholders? Is there a communication class to talk about technical subjects? Another great aspect, I'm trying to think, there was a third one I wanted to say. So technical, business. Oh, if you want to do statistics, right? Research design. So like, how do you set up an experiment for like A/B testing? I think those key things outside of, and tailor it to your interests, but go out your comfort zone to find a class that still allows you to graduate on time, but is also like expanding your skill set beyond just your computer science. And skill set of tools, which are extremely important, but now go outside to learn what's the best way to apply these tools to drive value for a business.
Yeah, Mark, I think just a minute left for a session. So first of all, thank you so much for, joining in the session and sharing your knowledge with us, your experience. I think also all the people are also, they got to know so many things. So thank you for that. And probably we can have more such sessions in the future, probably after a month or so, and a new topic as well, because I feel that people get to know more from the industry leaders compared to, definitely university knowledge is great, but having the hands-on experience and talking about that really helps us to understand what you have to work on. So thank you, and hopefully thanks. I think people are also thanking you.
Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate talking to you all. Add me on LinkedIn. Like, I'm more than happy to chat on LinkedIn as well. Just direct message me or comment on my post. I really love talking to people, and like I got a lot of mentorship and help from people above me who are in data science, and I'm just trying to return the favor to other people as well. So happy to chat to any one of y'all.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and I think we can end this session. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
thanks. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Yeah.